Appreciate it, Mario. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 Executive Job Market Strategy Session. I'm really glad that you're all here. Today, we are going to dive into how you can stand out in the ever-changing leadership landscape and take control. A lot of what we're going to talk about is going to be geared around leadership opportunities, but they can be applied to everyone's job search, frankly. And it's ideas around taking control of your next career move with confidence. A little bit about myself. I'm Edward Cruz. I'm the founder and CEO of Crusader Advanced Recruiting Solutions. I spent over 20 years helping, actually, before I moved out, I spent over 20 years helping startups from Fortune 500 companies to Fortune 10 companies to find the kind of talent and professional talent that truly makes an impact. For me, recruiting has never just been about placing people in jobs. It's about building futures for both the organizations and the people that I work with. That's why I started Crusader. We're not a typical search firm. We act more like a partner, and we go a lot deeper, especially when organizations reach out. It really matters. We try to balance between speed and precision. So what we have done is we've taken a very executive search philosophy and a contingent philosophy, and we've blended that to deliver a very unique service. So whether if you're actively exploring or just looking, getting prepared, my hope is that this session will give you some practical tools, some fresh insight, and a strategy to help you lead with confidence in 2025 and beyond. Again, Crusader, we were founded, like I mentioned, with the belief that it goes beyond just filling the roles, and it's about building futures. And this is a little bit about my background, the firm. As I mentioned, we have a hybrid model. A little bit about my background. My background spans over 2 decades in recruitment. I've led some high-performing teams globally. I built recruitment infrastructures from the ground up, and I've partnered with many leading organizations to help scale, not only at their professional level, but at their leadership level. And in addition, before launching Crusader, I was with I was the global lead for WPP, where I was overseeing 15 operating companies and the recruitment for that globally. I've placed hundreds, if not thousands, of people in roles globally. This year, we're seeing a massive shift in hiring. With AI, with ESG, digital transformation is leading the way. Traditional career paths are no longer the norm. A lot of executives must adapt to stay relevant. The expectations for executive leadership has definitely shifted. And, what we have seen is that the needle has moved. In 2025, I would say that there's no longer enough to rely just on traditional career trajectories or legacy titles. Companies are actively seeking leaders who can navigate disruption, champion innovation, and lead with agility. As we know, there's just so much happening from a workforce perspective. We've got a lot of external, I would say, let's paraphrase them as external triggers that are happening. You've got tariffs, you've got layoffs, you've got, I would say over the last 24, 36 months leading up to 2025, I've seen some of the best talent in market and being reshifted, right? There's significant transformation. There's an evolving workforce dynamic that's underneath that as well. A lot of modern executives are expected to be, more than decision makers. There must be strategic visionaries, change agents, and really, the market is calling for an inclusive culture builders. Um, Leaders are being asked to have that ability to adapt, inspire trust, and align business goals with purpose driven leadership is now the benchmark for long term success. I would say that this new landscape, the visibility, the authenticity, um, and forward thinking mindset are what we're seeing is starting to set standout leaders apart. But like I said, this it's not just leadership. It's all the way up and down the pillar, um, coming in right from school, all the way up to the mid level, all the way up to leadership. These attributes are starting to um, stand out within all levels. Um, there are a number of areas of focus that I recommend. Um, and we'll talk about and we'll touch on all of these pieces. We'll be talking about branding, right? Networking, market insights, search optimization, right? These are all pillars that, as a candidate, you want to build your competitive edge and get noticed by top tier companies. And if it's leadership roles, in addition to board positions as well. When it comes to networking, this is just a big area that 2024 and 22 and has trickled into 2025 aggressively. Personal branding is your executive reputation, or let's just say the personal branding is your reputation. What you do on LinkedIn, what you're posting, white papers, the content that you're putting out. Um, think of your branding as what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? In 2025, your brand must be intentional, right? Visible online. And I would say it needs to be clearly connected to business. That alignment, um, I would say 8 times out of 10, maybe 9 times out of 10, if I'm working with a hiring manager or hiring leadership, it goes beyond the resume. The first thing that hiring managers do, they go straight to LinkedIn. And it's super interesting to see that evolution. I mean, I used to have to give instructionals on LinkedIn and show profiles and take it a step further in terms of sharing a screen. Now, when I send in a resume or when I send in a profile, hiring managers will look at the LinkedIn first, then look at the resume second. They'll look at what people are posting, they'll look at what their content looks like. And it's super interesting. I've seen hiring managers say, well, based on what I see on LinkedIn, it doesn't look like it's going to align to what we're looking for. And frankly, I try whenever I represent a candidate, I mention to a candidate in many cases, well, how does your LinkedIn look? And make sure that what your resume and your LinkedIn that they mirror one another. Um, it's extremely critical. Your branding is your digital footprint. Strategic networking. Let's talk a little bit about that. Um, I would say over the last 24 months, the hidden job market is, I would say, over 80% of the roles that are out there, especially on the executive level. If you're not networking, and I mean networking with people that you know, people that can make introductions, people, recruiters that can make introductions to organizations that you might have a level of interest in, you want to have the exercise that you should be doing on a daily basis is identifying key people who influence hiring, build relationships, can help you build those relationships, and reconnect with maybe dormant contacts as well. You want to be visible. You want to, at least from an online perspective, you want to show value. And you want to be valuable to your network as well. So touching base with individuals that you may have had relationships with a couple years ago. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. That hidden job network, I would say, is actually more prevalent today than some job boards. One of the other areas is I always say to folks is make sure that you're staying aligned to market intelligence, making sure that you're paying attention to specific insights. Being future ready means staying ahead of market trends. If you're at the C level, CEOs are investing more in innovation, AI, sustainability, right? Leadership agility. As a candidate, you must speak the language of the boardroom. It doesn't, honestly, even if you're coming in at the entry point, going in at the mid level, like I said earlier, it's happening at all levels right now. The research component, when an organization is interested in you or you're interested in that organization, become a student of that organization. Go to their publications page, see what their current news, see what they've announced recently. If they're a public company, try to acclimate yourself to what their financials look like, right? In many cases, one of the first steps that I take before even engaging a client, or even taking on board a client, I want to make sure that their financials are healthy, right? Why? Because as I talk to candidates and I'm speaking to someone, I want to make sure that I'm presenting an organization that has, that is currently financially, fiscally in a good place, right? It tells a good story, right, to a candidate that's looking at that next opportunity, right? Let's talk a little bit about what the resume should look like. Your resume and LinkedIn profile should highlight, and your impact, right? I think people sometimes forget that they should really be looking at their LinkedIn and their resume as one document, right? It's not just your roles, right? You want to think about metrics. You want to think about outcomes. Every touch point you should present, right? You as a problem solver on your resume, right? Whether if it's a C-suite role, whether if it's a director role, a manager role, right? You want to try to align your LinkedIn and your profile. I mean, in many cases, candidates have anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 resumes, and they allocate those resumes to specific jobs and organizations. Since I work a lot at the executive and professional level, this has really been a theme to create search. I call it search success, right? Like I said here on this slide. It's about more than just applying to the role, right? It's about positioning. It's about visibility. It's about strategy, right? Your job search is a strategic search, right? In some cases, some candidates have heard me say your job search is a full-time job, right? And in many cases, with the market, the way it's been moving like a roller coaster up and down, and specific to industries, and we could talk a little bit about that when we start the Q&A session, is that there are specific industries that are investing, divesting, right? Um, follow what's happening in the financial markets as well, right? There's a lot happening right now that's impacting the way companies are making hiring decisions, right? And don't forget that your resume and your LinkedIn, your story matters, right? You want to have a clear value proposition about your background, right? Be strategic. I would say because I work so much at that director level and above, I would say that 80% of senior roles are not even posted, right? I mean, and that's that hidden job market that I'm talking about, right? And you might say, well, Ed, how are they filled? They're filled through relationships with recruiters, independent recruiters, boutique firms, large staffing firms. It's those relationships with those trusted recruiters where we're not mandated to post the role. In many cases, I would say 7 out of 10 roles that I'm executing on are confidential positions, right? So let's think about that for a second. That's a role that's not going to hit LinkedIn. That's a role that's not going to hit a job board. That's a role that maybe someone in the organization doesn't even know is happening, right? So that's why my recommendation has been for people, when you start to think about your job search success, you want to network with recruiters, you want to network with people that you've known throughout your career, right? You want to have others make introductions for you, referring you over to specific opportunities. LinkedIn does a great job with, if you know someone in another company, right, they can make introductions as well, right? And don't forget, and I keep coming back to this, your LinkedIn, right, is your professional presence online. That's your footprint, right? And then, of course, you have your resume, right? Think of LinkedIn as that's your storefront, right? Um, and and the reason I continue to circle back to this is because it's so important from a branding perspective, right? It has to reflect your impact, right? It's not your job description. I've seen a lot of LinkedIn's where people just copy paste and they throw in a job description, right? No, it goes further than that. Um, and then something else I like to talk about in terms of approach. I think mindset and momentum are extremely critical when it comes to job searches, right? Um, Most recently, at least over the last 24 months, 36 months, um, is I speak to a lot of folks that have incredible backgrounds, right? But job searches can be draining. Um, and I know some folks that have, especially for the senior roles, right? They're in the job market for 6, 8, 12 months, right? Um, they're pretty drained. Job searches, especially for those senior roles, um, it's there are less of those roles, right? So if there are less of those roles and 80% of them are not even posted, it takes the front end work to find out where those opportunities lie. Uh, a recommendation that I'd make is, create, it's a mindset. Mindset is key, but you want to keep a weekly action plan, right? And that weekly action plan should be outreach. It should be follow-ups. It should be content engagement, what you're driving out on LinkedIn, right? And if you don't want to create content for yourself, well, comment on someone else's content, right? So critical, so important, right? To be visible online, right? Engagement is so important. Don't forget that you want to celebrate, small wins. Every conversation, every individual that refers you, new insights that you might learn based on research, right? Make sure that you're celebrating, um, those wins, because you just don't know where your next opportunity will come from. And that's really important to understand, right? Today, I've read a lot. I put out a lot of publications. If you go to my LinkedIn, and I put out a lot of newsletters, and please, I try to share as much value um, with the job market as possible. Sign up for my newsletter. And there's, again, it's all free content. Um, it's not only for hiring managers, it's for the candidate as well, right? Um, and regularly I try to share tidbits there around what I'm learning on the front lines, right? I try to use real world examples. If you go through some of the stuff that I've written, obviously you won't know what client it is, you won't know if it's a specific organization, but these are real things that are happening in the market, right? Um, so new insights matter, right? That's the point of this. As we look ahead, now that we're into 2025, and as we look ahead, one thing is clear, that whether if it's an executive role, um, success is no longer defined by titles or tenure, right? It's coming down to adaptability. It's coming down to authenticity and the ability to create real lasting impact, right? Relationships matter, right? And I would say, because I work with a lot of leaders, I would say that the most effective leaders today, they don't wait for opportunity, right? They position themselves for the opportunity, for it, right? They position themselves for those opportunities. They invest in their brand. They nurture relationships. They stay ahead of market shifts. And they approach each conversation as a chance to add value. And we have to do that at every level, right? As you continue on your journey, you have to approach each conversation that you have and nurture those conversations, right? You might say, wow, this sounds like a heavy lift. This sounds like a lot, but that's what a job search is today, right? It is a heavy lift. I'll go back to the comment I said earlier. It's a full-time job, right? And the higher you go, the harder it gets. So whether you're actively searching or preparing, for your next, chapter, your journey is yours, right? To lead at the end of the day. You want to make sure that you go in with clarity, intention, and the right strategy. You could stand out in a crowded market or step into roles that align with your purpose and potential, right? But it does take effort. No longer are the days where you can post for a bunch of jobs and hope to get a call. You're likely to get a lot more rejection, with what's happening with AI on the front end, right? And I would say half the conversations that I'm having with candidates, they'll say to me, well, Ed, I applied for 20, 25 jobs. I got a rejection, automated response every time. It's because you have to go further. You have to go deeper. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. We could transition into, the question and answer Q&A session, but thank you for being here. And remember, your future isn't something to wait for. It's something to build. And I really appreciate for everyone attending. And thank you so much for hearing me out.